Hey, folks, it's time for the quote of the day. And occasionally, when I do the quote of the day, I get the opportunity to kind of reflect, not really nostalgia, but I get to reflect on people from my past. And like yesterday, I talked about Lucille Ball, and that gave me the opportunity to not really like go into the nostalgia tank. I didn't watch these videos and have this feeling of yesteryear. It was more like, I really appreciate her now. I like as a 50-year-old man, I get to appreciate what she did, and that adds something to it, right? There is a tinge of nostalgia, I guess you could say, but for the most part, it's just looking at somebody who was at the height of their craft, somebody who was a force of nature, and say, "This, she's amazing. She's amazing now." Like watching her now, obviously she's dead now, but watching her now, it's amazing to watch her. Today, I got the opportunity to do that again with the man that I'm quoting today. And I think that if you followed my page for any amount of time and you know my stance on the topic of skepticism, then you'll absolutely know what I'm talking about here. You'll hear this story, you'll understand who this man is, and you'll say, "Wow, that's where it comes from." Okay. And what's funny is I didn't really recognize it myself. I knew his name, I knew what he had done, and I didn't really recognize it until today I sat watching some of his old clips and reading about his stories and the things that he had done, and I was like, "Oh, I remember that. Okay, I remember that." And then I started to kind of draw these lines between when I first heard that or when I first read about these things that he had done in his life and how those had a profound effect on me and the way that I thought. And I didn't really realize that until I started to look into him today. But without a doubt, the man that I'm quoting today had a massive effect on me. Today I'm quoting the magician James Randi. Now, you might not know him as James Randi. What you may know him as is the Amazing Randi, and that's what his stage name was. Now, this is a man who was a stage magician. He was much, much like Harry Houdini. He was, and actually had a very similar career path. Uh, he was a stage magician and he did his thing, right? Like but he told everybody, right? Like just like Houdini, he would get up on stage and he would basically tell the audience, "This is a trick. Watch me do this trick. This is a trick the entire time. It's not real. The magic I do isn't real. It's just a trick. It's an illusion. You just believe it because you don't understand it, but it's not real. I'm not really doing these things. I'm not actually cutting Alice Cooper's head off on stage, which is something that he did. It's a trick. It's not real, right? And it's difficult for people to sometimes accept that. This actually goes back to like he was practicing magic when he was like 12, 13. And it wasn't until he got to be about 18 years old in that area, 17, 18 years old, where he went to church and the pastor was basically using cheap like mentalist tricks to fool the congregation. And James Randi saw it, understood what he was doing, and called him out on it. Got up on stage and told the entire church, this is what he's doing. He's a fraud. He's a liar. This is not real. This isn't divinely inspired. This is God, or this is not God. This is somebody just pulling a trick on you. And the people didn't want to hear it. The people in the church didn't want to hear it. Even though he was 100% accurate, the people in the church were like, "Boo, get off stage." And I think the pastor's wife called the cops on him, right? So like he gets arrested for telling the truth. Now I want you to think about that for a minute and then recognize that this becomes a pattern for him. He ends up trying to essentially disprove. Now, he doesn't like the term debunk, and I don't really blame him. A lot of times when you say, "I'm here to debunk this," people think that you're going in with the preconceived idea that it's fake. And he tried not to do that. He wanted to make sure that people understood that he wasn't debunking things. He was investigating them with an open mind, but just not so open that he just completely believed everything that came across his plate. He wanted you to prove it to him. Now, you may know him or you may recognize him because of his work in I can't remember what it's called. CSI it was the initials for it. The Committee for Skeptical Inquiry is what it was called. This was a group of people, including Carl Sagan and Isaac Asimov, that got together and basically talked about skepticism, talked about how important skepticism was. Now, James Randi was a magician, right? Like Harry Houdini. And like I said, had a career trajectory much like Harry Houdini's. Didn't die the same way, obviously, but was was somebody who was a stage magician, understood the power of illusion, understood the power of belief, understood that this was something that could be done for entertainment and fun, but in the wrong hands turned into something that was essentially evil. that was, something where you could take advantage of somebody, where you could get money off of somebody, where you could make them believe in things that weren't real. And that's what he spent the rest of his life trying to nip in the bud, trying to combat. Is, he became somebody who was a very well known, perhaps one of the most famous skeptics of all time. And to the point where, and this is very true, he had $1 million prize purse to anybody that could prove the claims of paranormal expertise, of the ability to contact the dead, of the ability to see the future. Anybody that could go into a laboratory controlled environment and actually reproduce these things would get paid $1 million. Now think about that. This was $1 million, and this wasn't $1 million today, which is still $1 million and it's still a fuck ton of money. But this was $1 million. I think it hit 1 million like in 1990 or some shit like that. Like, this is $1 million. All you got to do is show up and prove in front of scientists that what you say you do is what you say you do. And nobody ever claimed that prize because nobody's ever been able to do it, because none of it is real. And that is very, very important. That is the point of what all that James Randi said. He wasn't trying to take away people's magic. He was a magician. He just wanted you to know that this shit wasn't real, and that a lot of times people will spend their entire life fighting, clawing, and hating people that tell them the truth. They want their illusion. They want to not believe in reality. They want to believe in some sort of magical, mystical world. But none of it is real because none of it can be proven. It's just what you think or what you believe, but you can't prove any of it works because none of it ever has, and none of it ever will. It's just that simple. And I'm not trying to attack it. I'm trying to tell you that this is from the point of view of somebody who literally went into these investigations and trying to understand these things and wanting to believe, right? Like wanting to, but not willing to take the shortcuts that a lot of people do to believe, right? He wanted it to be done. He wanted to see it. This is a man who is famous for his essentially lifelong contest with Uri Geller, the guy that could bend spoons by rubbing them really hard. Like that shit is something that could be replicated by a fucking 5-year-old now. But back then, people thought that it was proof. And what's crazy about it is when James Randi went, or when James Randi went on, I almost said Uri Geller, when James Randi went and on the Tonight Show with Uri Geller and basically made him use like real spoons, Uri Geller didn't do it. He couldn't bend the spoon. He spent 22 minutes trying to bend spoons and he couldn't do it. And this is the damnable part of it. This is the part that I think people need to really appreciate and understand how stupid some people are. There was a large portion of people that saw Uri Geller not do the thing that literally was his claim to fame, and then say, well, that just proves that it was psychic because he said that he was feeling weak that day. So that's why he couldn't do it. So that proves that he was psychic. The fact that he couldn't do the thing that he said he could do for a lot of people proved that he was psychic. That is a phenomenally, staggeringly amount of stupid, in my opinion. Now, about the quote of the day, and I think that it is very, very, very important. And I want you to really let it challenge you. I want you to think about the things that you believe in. I want you to think about the things that you accept for no reason whatsoever. James Randi once said, "Those who believe without reason cannot be convinced by reason." Let me read that again. Those who believe without reason cannot be convinced by reason. Think about that. If you believe something and you don't have any reason or any proof or anything else, there's no reason in the world for you to believe it other than maybe you were told that, or maybe it just feels right, or whatever it may be. You cannot be convinced away from it by actual logic and reason. That should tell you something. That should tell you about your belief. That should tell you about the direction that you're going. And maybe, just maybe, take a few minutes and really examine it. Do you accept these things? Do you believe these things because they are real? Or do you just believe them because they feel good? And if that's the case, go take a bath. Go for a walk. Those feel just as good. And they're actually real. James Randi helped change my mind at an early age. And you're seeing the product of that today. Happy birthday to James Randi. And to the rest of you, please take care of yourself, take care of others. I'll talk to you soon.